In this lecture, we're going to develop our understanding of animation and keyframes by practicing our poses. Okay, so here's where we got up to last time, and I'm in pose mode with my armature, so I'll jump to object mode and delete the reference that we got there at the moment. I'll bring in a different picture this time. I'll go to front view first, and the Pexels image by Ariana Jade, I think. We'll drag that in, and again, this is from Pexels, and I'll just scale it down so it's a similar size. Zoom in a touch, select the armature into pose mode, and I'm going to select all my bones and just make sure that they've got their location and rotation keyframed in this position, and then move across to frame 40 to set up the pose. Okay, so your challenge is to try and recreate this pose that you see here. Pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so it's always tricky to know where to start. The hips are quite influential in this pose, so I'll start with those, but it's not always the place you'll start. I'll grab our root bone here, back round to the front, and RZ to rotate the hips so they're facing that way. I'm also going to press R to rotate and lean the character back slightly like this. In fact, a fair way, because then I can position these bones so there's that curve to the body. Looks really odd at the moment. We'll have to sort out this lean slightly as well, so I'll just bring those back. Let's position the feet now. So I'll bring this one out, G then X, and it's lifting up a lot from the ground, and I'll select the foot as well and rotate in the Z axis. That moves our pole around as well, and let's move this one out, G then X, the other way. Not too far, so somewhere around about here, and then we have to go back to our hip bone and move it down slightly so there's a bit more of a crouch. So that's a bit better there, and I'll move it back a bit, so G then X, somewhere around there, and I'll move it up very slightly to try and recreate the position. It's not too bad, but I think we need more rotation in this foot, so R then Z, and we probably need this pole here to go in a bit more, so I'll just move that across like this. And this knee is angled that way, whereas this one is the other way across here. That might be helped if we raise the foot up. As you can see, it's raised up here, so I can press G then Z, and then I have to rotate this one. I'll go to front view for that so I can see the floor, so R then XX for the local X, and R then XX, so that can stand on the ground like that. It's a lot closer, but we have to come in a little bit, I think, so G then X to somewhere around about here, I think. So you might be noticing a slight limitation in the way we have to select our target bone and the foot bone to move them around. It'd be nice if they work together in some way. And also, this is called the foot roll, where the foot will go up on the toes like this. Good rigs have that automated, but we'll come to that later. Okay, so back to front view. Might need a little bit more positioning here, probably somewhere around there. We might want to come back slightly as well, G then Y. A little bit of a backwards lean there. So we're getting fairly close. Work on the upper body now. The angle of the shoulders looks relatively okay, but we can probably twist these bones around a bit. If I select all three of them and change my transform pivot point up here, or you can press the period key on your keyboard and get the same menu. And if I go to individual origins and press R then Y twice, that's all their individual origins. That will rotate them all at the same time. So you'll get more of a twist that way, rather than going in, rotating this one, YY, R, YY, R, then YY, and going through like this. So it's much easier to get a twist by selecting a group of bones and going to their individual origins and rotating them. Okay, so that looks all right. Let's move this one out very slightly, this one in, so RXX, to bring that in. That looks a fairly okay position there, maybe in a touch there. That's not too bad. And the hand bone just dangles down a bit. We can't do much with our fingers because, again, our rig is a little bit limited there. But the thumb we can bring in a little bit. I can either rotate this or I can even G to grab. So if we zoom into the hand there, you can see the thumb's kind of splayed out a bit. So if I press G to grab, I can bring that in a bit. But that's a big limitation to this type of rig. And we'll bring the arm back just a touch. So around about there. Let's find a better position for our camera here so I can see the results a bit more clearly. And let's quickly work on the head. So I'll rotate the neck, R, Y, Y, and then the head, R, Y, Y. And I'll rotate it upright like this. The neck's sort of leaning backwards a little bit, so we'll have a bit. So I'll adjust them accordingly. And he's looking up very slightly, somewhere around there, I would say. It's not too far off anyway. Lastly, this upper arm here. I want to move that across, probably out a touch, and RXX. I always choose RXX for the elbow, and you can actually lock those sort of things in place, but it's simple enough to remember to press X twice. So I'll move the elbow back a little bit, and the arm up a little bit more, somewhere around here, and RYY to kind of rotate it so it comes close to the body like this. And we're relatively close there. I think actually I've got too much twist in the spine, so let's try and select the backbone there, R then Z, and then slightly less twist in the spine, I think. So I'll select all these three, R, Y, Y, and untwist it slightly. Maybe just these two now, R, Y, Y. So we're not too bad, we're fairly close there if we look at this image here and this one here. So hopefully you got somewhere around there. I'll select all, I, to insert a keyframe, location and rotation. Then I'll jump to frame 60 and we'll do one more. So again, into object mode, I'll delete my reference image and bring in another one. I'll go to front view. We'll have an action pose where they leave the ground. So this is by Oliver Kjostorm, I think. I'm not really sure how you pronounce their name, but again, it's from Pexels. A little bit blurry this image, but we can make out what's going on. Okay, so at frame 60, pause the video and have a go at this sort of pose. Okay, so hopefully you got an okay with that. So I'll select my rig into pose mode, and you might be tempted to move the root bone. Let's say select the root bone, rotate it round and move them upwards until they're in some sort of level position like this. But you don't really move the root bone like that. The root bone's there for something more like a walk cycle, and the character's walking in place, and you use the root bone to move the whole character along. And generally it's not that common to use it in this way. What would be useful is to go back to our T pose. So I'll select everything, Alt R and Alt G, and we're already in a pose that's kind of similar to this. I'll select my target bones, I'll select the hip bone, I'll go to side view quickly and rotate them round. Oh, I've still got individual origins on, so make sure you change that back to medium point, and then I can rotate them round and they'll move into position. Now what I forgot to do was select the foot bones as well, because they're not attached. So I'll undo that. They're copying the location of the shin bone, but not the rotation. And we did that on purpose. So we have to select those as well. And then I'll go to side view and rotate those and move the character into position. Let's just have a quick look at the picture. So they're slightly upright like this, slightly turned like this, and they've got a bend in the middle. So we'll start positioning them from here. Let's pull the legs apart a bit, so somewhere around here. This one's up a little bit there. Just looking at this picture over here. Let's get to a position where I can see them okay. So that's about right. They've got quite an arch at the back, so we can select these three bones, go back to individual origins, and RXX for the local x-axis, and they've got that nice bend there. I could have actually done that with the neck bone as well, but I think we can just do that manually somewhere around here. In fact, the neck is sort of slightly forward, in fact, so let's bring that forward and maybe the chin tucked in a little bit like that, I think. It's not a precise art, and these arms need to go backwards slightly, and we can do a bit of that with the clavicle as well, and that's looking quite fun. Now the hands are out like this, which means there's a twist, and we can twist at the forearm, but there's also a bit of a twist at the shoulders there. So I'll rotate these RYY and rotate them out like that, and this one RYY out like that. Just make sure that's working from here, and we can have a little bit of rotation here. I'm going to press R then X twice to bring that in a bit, and that will show us how far we need to go with the Y. So RYY, and the other one as well, RYY. It's not too bad, but we're starting to see a little bit of distortion around the shoulder there. And that's a little bit of a limitation of the rig. We can move the hand bone up, so R to rotate that. Oh, now interestingly, I must have forgotten to connect this thumb bone up to the hand bone. and it's still connected to the forearm. I thought it was mirrored when I was doing that, but obviously not, so I've forgotten to do it on this side. Again, that's another useful mistake to highlight. Obviously, I can grab this and rotate it without too much problem, which serves its purpose fine here. But I'll undo that for a moment, and I'll show you that although it's bad practice, really we should get this right in the first place, but you can go in and edit the rig, even though we're a bit down the road in the posing. The way to do that is I'll go back to edit mode with my armature and select the two bones, making sure the parent is the active bone, and Control P, keep offset. Back into pose mode, and let's see if that's distorted our mesh. It seems to be okay. R then XX. Oh, that's waving. R then ZZ, isn't it, for this one? And the thumb bone is going with it. So that's how we can sort that one out. So look at our image. I'll press R then Z and rotate it like this. And we're roughly there. This one as well. R, Y, Y. The thumb bone is definitely connected with this one because I remember to do it for this one. R and Z, move that back a bit. And I think we're pretty much a similar sort of pose to what we have here. Okay, so hopefully you got an okay with that and the thumb bone didn't cause you too much of a disaster. And then you feel a bit more comfortable posing your characters. And you may be becoming a bit more aware of some of the limitations that we have with this rig. So that's as far as we'll go with this rig. So you don't have to save your work here, but you might want to for a reference in future. And that concludes this lecture.